I'm back with another helpful hint. This one is kind of late in the making because it probably should have been something early in the year, but whatever. And not to mention, this is the time frame in which people are trying to restructure their lessons, their instructional blocks to include interventions and stuff for ELC. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go and talk about lesson planning, and we're going to talk about chunking your activities and trimming the fat in a sense, so that you can maximize your instructional time. And also we're going to talk about double planning. Now we are in a pandemic right now, so some people are going transitioning from 90 minutes block to 30 minutes. And some of us struggle with the 90 minutes, so we should be all right with the 30 minutes. And I say 30 minutes because 30 minutes is you're pushing your time frame with trying to keep people's attention. But if it's interactive, engaging, you may be able to keep the students on. But you want to make sure that your instruction is sound. So, but how do you go from I've been teaching with 90-minute blocks, now I'm going out to 30 minutes, and they're not changing the amount of information I need to know, and they're not even changing the pace in which the kids need to know it. So, a couple of years ago, I brought to you this a training where I talked about 90-minute blocks. So I'm gonna use the same format, and we're gonna see how we can trim the fat. So I went to good old Pinterest because I love me some Pinterest, and Pinterest has a lot of information, and it had on there an example of a 90-minute block. It had many examples, but this is one of my pool. So this was actually a pretty good lesson. Oops. This one has a warm up. You go back over the homework. It has an inquiry lab. It has some notes. It has an activity with the partner. It tells you that you can, at the end, you can go and do breakout sessions with, in small groups with students. There's another one here that deals with, you start with a quiz, you go into some notes, do a little activity. You have some more notes, and then you go into a breakout into groups and stuff. Here's another one that approaches it from, it has a bell ringer warm up, it has some notes, has a little activity, has a quiz inside, and it breaks out in groups in the middle of the class versus at the end of class, comes back with a video, and then allows kids time to begin their homework. But what if you had a test that day? You're not doing all that on a test day. So this is how a test day looks. So you have some kind of review that the kids are doing, and then you have a test. Then you have some kind of activity at the end after the test. That's all nice and dandy if you had 90 minutes, but you do not. Because please do not have your children on the Zoom for 90 minutes. That is just torture. So let's take this first one. The time frame is great, but it's allowing for 90 minutes. So we're going to have to trim the fat. I like to always start, even in Zoom, with a bell ringer or do now, because I want the students to be doing something when they come in. You do not have time to go and find stuff. Come in prepared. Keep that, because if you keep that expectation, when they transition to brick and mortar, you will not have as many issues because they already know this is a working class. So I want to take half of this, okay? And especially now when we have ELC testing, one of our teams is what they're doing is instead of having their kids on for 90 minutes, which they were doing it for a while, which is, that's a lot, they've split it up. So they're going to have it where the students are on 45 minutes for some kind of instruction. And those students who actually, at the end of that 45 minutes, they have like somewhat of assessment. Whoever does well on the assessment, just a quick check for understanding, they get to go finish whatever assignment. So they have the other 45 minutes to their own devices. Either they're finishing up work or they're doing whatever they need to do. But if you did not pass that assessment, I love that. If you didn't pass the assessment, you got to stay on. So with those students, what they're doing is they're allocating time for an intervention block. So they'll have an additional 45 minutes, which is somewhat torture, but if you had understood it, paid attention, whatever, you wouldn't have to sit for it. So let's restructure this so that it accounts for 45 minutes of just general instruction, 45 minutes of intervention. Okay, so we're going to take those last few activities off. I think this is pretty good for initial activity: warm up, bell ringer. You have to do some kind of notes. So maybe you are presenting new information, or you reinforcing information that's already been taught. and you want to have some kind of activity. The kids need to be doing something, and then you want to have some kind of assessment. Doesn't have to be a formal quiz, but some kind of check for understanding. But these time frames, that's too much. That's 40, 65 minutes right there. So we have to slash them. So we're gonna keep the 5 minutes for the warm up because that gives us time, the kids on time to get into the class, get sorted, take go over your assignment. But if we have notes, we're not gonna spend more than 10 minutes on the notes. Okay? And we're gonna slash that time to 10 minutes. For your activity, we can't spend more than 10 minutes on this activity. So it has to be an activity that they can accomplish within a 10-minute time frame. Sometimes we're giving them activities that are going to take too long. So we need to actually try to figure out, leverage some worksheets that will generate the greatest results, that we can actually see that they understand something. After the activity, though, you have to assess and see what's stuck. Okay? But you can't give them 10 minutes. We don't have that time. 5 minutes. So get those key questions in and go. Now, that's your first. That's 30 minutes. You can, it gives you, I put it 30 minutes because it gives you a little room for adding a few minutes to something, or taking them a few minutes away from something. So 30 minutes to 45 minutes. The next session, so if you did well in this assessment, I see you next class period. If you did not, now you have to make sure that you present the information in a different way. Okay. So now this is our intervention session. I like that their breakout rooms are right here because what you could, I mean, the groups, because you could break them out based on what they did not do well. You could have given an assignment where they're actually working on something that they did not fare well on, and or you, it could be a whole group, but you have that option here. This is a good point to have breakout sessions, and then you have some kind of so I would take about 15 minutes to review some to go over that. That gives them time to work through some kinks and you to talk to them and everything. And then I will assess them again. Now, my assessment doesn't need to take a long time, but I do need to have some kind of assessment to see, did we correct any misunderstandings? Did we correct any misconceptions? And then you can kind of, if they did well, then tell them bye. If they did not, then what you probably end up need to do is have them start working on homework a little bit just to see where they are, but also have them come to a tutorial session later on that day. So one of my teams, they have it where they broke up the 90-minute sessions, 45 minutes for general instruction, 45 minutes for intervention for those who did not fare well on the assessment for the in the general instructions. For those who do not fare well in the intervention, they have that assessment, quick assessment. If they still didn't do well, they have to come to tutorials. So this is a great way of modifying your schedule to account for COVID and this zooming world that we're living in. Now, here's a key thing that I want to make sure I talk about. When you are planning your assignments, planning your lessons, you need to plan not only what you're doing, but what your students are doing. Oftentimes, when I come into classes, I see the teacher is working away. I hear the teacher, but I don't see any evidence of the student doing anything. And I can't see them listening, especially if their camera is not on. So the question becomes, when you're actually planning for things, you need to make sure you're planning for not only what you're doing, but what the students are doing. So for example, my do now. When my do now is posted, students, my expectation is for students to be logging into the Zoom and they begin working on their do now. If they need notes, refer to their notes. And what I'm doing is I'm waiting, I'm manning the waiting room, I'm welcoming students, and I'm reminding students of the expectations and to begin their work. And I'm counting down. If I gave them 5 minutes, I'm counting down my 5 minutes. You have 2 more minutes left. Okay. If I'm doing notes, well, first thing I do is I think about what the student's doing. I need to have evidence that that's what they're doing. What are they doing? They are reading the slides. I'm not reading slides. I'm calling on students to read slides, or they're calling on each other to read a certain slide. And as they're reading it, they're taking notes in their interactive notebook or whatever. They're putting it on this page. They're creating this Freya model. They're creating this whatever. I don't care, but it needs to be something specific. I know what I'm expecting them to do. And I really want to have some accountability. So whatever they're expecting to do at the end of this, I need to see it. So either they're going to take a picture of it, or they're going to take their notebook and put it up in front of me, they're going to show some evidence that they did the task that I asked them to do. Because if I'm talking through the note slides and I'm making notations and I see no evidence of them doing anything, who's really doing the work? During that time, I'm just facilitating. I'm not doing anything. I'm just making sure that they call on each other and that somebody's reading the slides. And then I'm asking probing questions because I want to hear what their thinking process is. So I have to have some kind of evidence of what they've gathered from this, what they're learning. If I'm doing an activity, the students are like I think one activity was a video. If I'm doing an activity, the students are watching the activity. They are answering the questions. They are doing stuff with the whiteboard, whatever the task is, they're doing something, and I can see it. Anyone coming into my class can see the students doing something. And then what am I doing? I'm just showing the clip. I'm periodically stopping the clip, asking them questions, making them write things down. I'm facilitating. I promise you, I know this world is different right now and it doesn't quite look like it normally would. But if you use the same great practices that are incorporated in a brick and mortar setting, they can apply to this virtual setting. But remember, always ask yourself, what are the students doing? Make sure your time frames for your lessons are not too long, but not too short. They're long enough for you to gauge to see what the students are learning. Okay? Hopefully that helps. Thank you.